Hi, welcome to the program. I have with me today Larry Vollmer. You may recognize his name because he's been on the show before as a candidate for the school board. He won his election. And I have him back because he's made a commitment, another commitment to children, an international commitment. And I wanted Larry to be able to tell you about that story. So, Larry, thanks for being here with me today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate you opening the door.
Well, let's just back up. Before we talk about your international commitment, let's talk about the school board. Congratulations on your win.
Oh, well, thanks. Thanks.
And, you know, I was in a school board meeting the other day, and they've made a decision on how they're going to go forward, at least present to the public how to go forward on the school bond. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, what you see there is the long-range facilities planning task force that the board actually gave this assignment to several years back, has brought forward to the board a recommendation. That recommendation, I think, is in the $100 million range, which sounds like a lot of money, but the idea is to maintain the same tax per thousand as the existing bond that's just about to go off next year. And what that would include is what we call level 1 and 2 repairs, major structural repairs, roofs, security systems, things like that. Phase 2 expansion of the high school, which creates new learning spaces, professional technical libraries, that kind of stuff, as well as additional necessary repairs throughout the district.
All right. Well, thanks for that update on your
bet.
work at the school board. And again, thank you for your work. You are a Holt family.
Sure.
Tell us what that means. Explain what that means.
Sounds kind of odd, but Holt is an international adoption agency out of Eugene. That's where their world headquarters are. And to be a Holt family means that you've actually worked with that agency to adopt a child, and we did 12-something years ago. Our daughter was 5 months when she came home, and she's from South Korea. And she's about 12 and a half now, just finished her 6th grade year at middle school.
Wow. Okay, so you joined this organization, took advantage of the services of this organization 12 years ago. Recently, you've made an additional commitment. Can you tell us about that?
They had an outreach that they want, and they call it an ambassador program. And what they do is they get people, adults, to travel to a foreign country. In this particular case, it was the Philippines. I was there in early May. And they want these adults to meet some children that are called waiting children. And what that means is these are children that are ready, available for adoption immediately. And typically they have some other, not necessarily physical challenges, but challenges that make them not as attractive to adopt as other kids. And in this particular instance, we were dealing with and working with children who are just older. These are children that are maybe 8, 9 years old up to the age of 15 or 16. So these are perfectly wonderful, healthy children that just, you know, they're not infants, they're not babies. So people that are interested in adopting may overlook an older child because their preference would be somebody that's much younger. And we were there to work with these kids and learn about them.
And oftentimes the kids can have siblings. So there's
Sure.
2, 3 kids in a family, and they come together. You would never break up the siblings. So if you
Correct.
You may choose to adopt 3 siblings
Sure.
at once.
We had a family that we were doing outreach with when we were there. There was 5 children in the family. Now imagine that commitment from a parent, or imagine somebody that's applying to adopt and say, well, we've got a family of 5. That may be a bit much to take on for some people, but there are families out there that will do that.
Well, let's just take that thought of adopting 5 kids for a minute and go back to the foundation of the Holt program. Holt was the name of the founders.
Correct.
Bertha and
Harry.
And tell us a little bit about how they got this started.
It was placed on their heart to help out children after the Korean War, and these were mixed racial children. Children of Amerasians is what they were called, American and Asian children that were adopted, and they found that they couldn't go help those children because there was no laws in place domestically that would allow them to do that. And they didn't accept that. They proceeded to reach outright to both houses of Congress, and there was a law that allowed them to go there, and they adopted 8 children from South Korea in the late 50s. That's how their agency was started at that point.
Yeah, and this was a time when the social workers discouraged people adopting children of different races, different colors, because they didn't match, because they wouldn't fit in, because it wouldn't be able to be secret, because adoptions were, for the most part, kept secret. It wasn't something to talk about.
Back then, it was much more. It was much less accepted back then than
Yeah.
it is now. Certainly now, it is very commonplace, and mixed racial or biracial or triracial families exist all over the place now. And at least in the Northwest, it's very open and accepting.
Yeah, but back when Bertha and Harry were getting started, this was revolutionary.
It was it was unheard of.
That they were turning that adoption. What was it? Bertha's phrase that they were changing adoption from a badge of shame to a banner of love.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what it is. It's just a family. They're just children, and we're just adults. And what does it matter where you started? It's where where you are and where you're going that's important.
This was a humble couple in Cresswell. They had 6 kids of their own, and they got this idea, and now it's an international agency.
Yep.
Operating in how many countries?
Oh, a dozen.
Yeah, and
They've placed over 40,000 kids.
yeah, wow. And Bertha, Harry died at an early age, and Bertha kept it from going. And
She was well in her 90s.
yeah,
Wow.
it's just a great inspiration.
I mean, that's a great spiritual commitment. She's not making to children. She's providing a greater service to the kingdom, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a great beginning story. So let's get back to the present. Somebody may choose to adopt 5 children from the Philippines. You met them.
Sure.
Well, let's talk about your trip. I don't think we've talked about that. You just recently.
I've been back a few months now, and we traveled over there. I was there 10 days in early May, and we flew in. We spent 5 days in Metro Manila. It's a big city, bigger than anything we have here in the country, without a doubt.
Wow.
And we went to several adoption agencies, and we traveled to a resort with a handful of kids to get to know them really well, find out their story, find out what their circumstances are, and when we are actually going to take this information out to the public, when that's coming here pretty soon. I'll have presentations together and be speaking it publicly about it. But I'll actually be able to talk about these kids personally, and someone say, well, tell me about that family. And I'll actually be able to answer questions about those boys or that family of 3, 2 boys and a girl, or whatever it is, and speak about them directly, because I spent a good part of a week with those kids in the middle of activities, fun and games, meals, you name it.
So this, in fact, was a pilgrimage, and you're on a mission.
Yeah, we're on a mission trip. That's exactly what it is.
You went there, you made these connections, and you're coming back here to talk to people about the possibility of them adopting the children that you met, the very children.
Absolutely. And then all these kids are older. All these kids are 8 years or above.
And have them come live with us here in Yamhill County, in McMinnville,
Sure.
in Newburgh,
Sure.
Amity.
Anywhere.
Yes.
Anywhere is better than where they are, I think. Their future is brighter if they are able to leave their country and find a forever home.
Let's touch a little bit on that. Culturally, you found something there in the Philippines about adoption locally. What tell us about that?
It's not, you would think that in our society, the freedoms we have and the culture we have, that adopting is really not that big of a deal. For them, culturally, it's not as easy to do. There's a lot of restrictions. There's a lot of, it's not looked on as openly within the Philippine culture as it is here. So the best chance for these children is to be in a more westernized culture, like Europe or the Americas, something like that. That's where these children have the best chance for a great future.
All right. Well, you brought back some pictures with you. And
I did.
I can't wait to get into your travel log. Let's, Mike, would you bring up that first slide? I think we said we were going to put up the Holt International contact information. And I'll let you know it, folks at home. I'm going to put this up here just for a few more seconds, but I'll put it up again later, because I know by the end of the show you're going to want to have this information so you can find out more about this or tell someone about it. So, Mike, let's go to the first picture now.
As we're spending time getting to know a group of children, and again, these children are anywhere between the ages of 6, 7, and 8, up to 14, 15, or 16. We're trying to go out in their own community and have experiences with them. These children live in an orphanage. They don't go hang at the mall and have ice cream. What a neat experience for them to do something like that
So that's where you are.
for the first time.
You're at the mall.
We're at a shopping mall having some ice cream. Could have been very well been the first time for any of those kids to do something like that. And it's something that we do every day.
And the woman in the picture?
That is one of our ambassadors, and she lives in Vancouver.
Okay, so you traveled, and she was on this same
Yeah,
mission
there was
with you.
5 ambassadors, including me, and then one gal by the name of Jessica, and she was representing Holt
Okay.
down in Eugene.
All right, there's the next one.
This
Tell us
this
about
would be a great example of what an orphanage looks like. You know, there's this atypical idea of what they look like. They're dark, and really not. This is a wide open grounds, very modern facility, and you see these kids are not certainly 8 to 15 years old. These are little guys that were following me around and climbing all over me all the time. But this gives you an idea of what it looks like inside an agency, inside of an orphanage. I'm sorry. They're very clean, very tidy. These children are very well cared for. They're loved. They just don't have parents of their own, and they may live 30 or 40 to a home. And these homes are large and in bunk rooms and stuff like that. So,
Tell us a little bit about, well, there you see a fence. And maybe you can't tell at home, but there's barbed wire at the top of that fence. Why is that?
well, a couple things. That's actually a fence. They've got chickens and ducks and other livestock there inside,
okay.
Inside an orphanage, and they don't want those in the kitchen
Yeah?
yet. But you see a lot of these kids are in uniforms, which is what that agency does. And the young lady that's on my back wearing my pink bandana was one of the kids that we were doing outreach with. And so she's showing me all around her property, showing me where the chickens and the ducks and the lizards are behind the fence. But that's actually adjacent to their property. And of course, the other younger kids are her friends that are following me around, telling me their stories and showing me their stuff.
Well, you know, Larry, I didn't realize this was the duck pen on the other side, but you had talked about there are fences between the orphanage and the city because...
They literally keep these kids in a very safe, very secure, very clean environment.
What's it like on the outside?
It's abject poverty would probably be my best way to describe it. And I'm not talking about the grossest thing you've ever seen, but it's certainly inside the gates is very much an oasis for these children. And they live in a very clean, loving environment. And outside, it's the hard, hard world.
Yeah. So these kids are ready to come to they've been well loved. They're ready to be part of a family.
Absolutely.
And tell us more about your experience with the kids.
These are just kids. I don't know. My wife, as we get started here, she was the one that signed me up. She was the one that said, Larry, you really should do this. You can reach kids. And I'd never really understood what that meant. But as I went there and I traveled to see these kids, this happens to be Jessica. She's our Holt person from Eugene and a youngster. I mean, these are just kids that want to sit down and on your lap and tell you stories and have a smile and a hug.
Yeah.
And that's all they are. They're just kids. But anyway, she said that I know how to reach kids, and I don't know what that meant. But obviously, we spent time right in the middle of what they're doing, having all these activities to get them to talk about their life, how old they are, what they like to do, what activities they like. Some are artistic, some are very sports related. You get the kids on the bike, they just are in heaven. I mean, what a great experience. These are 2 of our other ambassadors, one from Portland and the other from Central California. I think she's down somewhere around Sacramento. And what kids don't like to swim, right? I mean, these are all older sisters, 13, 14, 16 years old.
These 3 children are sisters?
Yep. 2 sisters and 1 friend that's with a different family group. But these are all older kids, and I know that my kid does that around the swimming pool.
And where are they swimming?
We actually took these children to a resort, got them away from their orphanage and took them to a resort where they could have access to the ocean to swim, volleyball courts.
That's the next picture, is that the ocean, isn't it?
Swimming pools, all that kind of stuff. So they could have those experiences, because when they're in the orphanage, they're pretty well there. They're not... This is the same young lady that this was goodbye time. One of the hardest things I've ever did.
bet.
Oh, there was not dry eyes anywhere, me included. I mean, this was a youngster I had carrying on my back, and she gives probably the best hugs on the planet.
Wow. What's next, Mike? Okay, where are we here?
This is a silly picture, but we're in another orphanage in Metro Manila, and this is inside Metro Manila specifically. And I'm at one of our children that we were working with took us to their home where she lives, and she's in the dark pink shirt, kind of in the middle, and they were fascinated by my hairdo. Apparently, it's not a common thing. So I was rather the brunt of a lot of jokes. But again, if you go where the kids are, they're going to want to be doing whatever you're doing, and you get to talk to kids, you get to spend time with them and see how happy they are, what they're all about. You know, they're no different than our kids here. This is where they call home, but it's not long term. This is just where they live for a while. Now we're back in Metro Manila inside of an orphanage, and the same one we were at earlier. One of our ambassadors there sitting with some other kids there, and they were actually going to do a performance for us, so we're all getting seated there. And some of these kids are, 1, 2, 3, and 4 years old, and some of the older kids were doing some other presentations up there. But this is the first group that we took to one of the resorts, and there's about as many adults there as there are children. All the children are in the front row, but you have 2 sibling groups there, 2 brothers, a brother and 2 sisters, and then one just older young lady. All these kids are between 9 and 14 years old.
Let's just finish up here, and then I've got some questions about these.
Anyway, back
children.
inside of an orphanage with lots of kids. They want to play games. They want to interact. They just want to show you what they like to do.
Yeah. Okay, what have we got? Okay.
If you take the kids to the playground, you have them. That's where they live. That's how you can reach kids. That's how you can get them to talk and open up. And for us to be able to actively and intelligently come back and tell their story, you have to get to know them.
Yeah.
And I think we do. So.
All right, there's that contact information again, and I'll give you just a second to write that down. All right. So you went there, you got to know these kids, you could tell us a lot of those kids' names and about them.
Sure.
And now you're ready to go to the public, and what's your mission now?
I want to talk to families in the county, in the community, here, there, and everywhere. Talk to them about these kids specifically. See if they have a place in their home for these kids. My job is not to place them, it's just to tell the story of these children. Again, as an adoptive parent, a lot of people who know who I am, I mean, it's not an unusual thing. I've got a lot of those adoption experiences to share, so I could put a lot of those things at ease. So I have that experience, certainly know the kids. I think it provides a great opportunity to connect somebody with some of these older children that are just really looking for their forever home.
Yeah. So you're planning, you hope to speak at churches?
Churches.
Other functions?
There could be some city organizations. I may have some ones where I will rent out a space, maybe at a school building or something, and invite the public who may not go to church or may not see me there. I may have some public speaking engagements, and I'm going to say that'll happen later summer into the fall and winter of this year. I have a 1-year commitment, and I will probably fill that up and then some.
Okay. All right. So. Well, a few interesting points I learned as I was reading that Holt and other adoption agencies, they are there to find families for children, and not the other way around. They're not there finding children for families. That puts the child at the peak of the.
I think to be an advocate for children is the most important thing, because they want to put the child with the right family instead of just trying to find a family for any kid and shuffle them through. So their advocacy is the child first. Yeah. Now they don't dismiss the prospective parents, but they work with them and what their circumstance is currently to try to find the best child that fits their circumstance, just the best chance of success. Because it is, there's a lot of change that comes when you bring another person into a house, especially maybe an older child that doesn't know our culture, that doesn't know how things work here. There's a lot of fear and anxiety that goes along with that. So you want to have the right parents there, not just someone that's willing to pay a set of fees and bring a kid over and hope it's going to work.
Oftentimes that kind of setup will result in another industry called child trafficking. Oh yeah. And that's what this is not.
This is not.
You've been through this experience yourself. You've seen it firsthand.
First class, all the way. It is all about the kids, and it's all about doing the right thing for children. Absolutely.
All right. Very good. So we're going to call this your campaign kickoff, right? This
Oh,
is,
absolutely. This is my first event to kind of start getting the word out about some of these activities that I'll be doing around the community.
I wanted to ask you, how did this trip change you?
My wife, I laugh about it now. She was the one that encouraged me to do this. She has a connection with Holt, maybe gets monthly newsletters and things like that, and was reading it. And certainly I'm familiar with the agency. That's who we used through our adoption. But she told me, she goes, you need to do this. You'd be good at it. And I really never understood what that meant. I like kids. I serve on the school board. I teach Sunday school. So it's not an adverse thing that I have about children, but I didn't know what she meant until I went over there and spent time with the kids. And I find myself in the middle of whatever they were doing. And I always had a group of kids around me all the time. So I could reach them maybe in ways that I didn't understand. I guess I learned that about myself. I could certainly communicate with all these kids, had a great time, lots of laughs, lots of fun. And I learned a lot about what wonderful children they are and how lucky people would be here to have them and their family.
People have a lot of concerns. The health of the children, maybe they're concerned, are they going to be able to speak English? What about that situation? What did you find?
They depending on their age, they all go to school.
Yeah.
They learn English in their schools. They learn their native language, Tagalog, first, but they can all understand English just fine. Based on their age, they have different levels of ability to speak English, but they understand it just fine. So communication isn't completely simple, but it's not impossible either. You'll be able to speak with these kids, and they'll learn, especially if they come to our school system here in McMinnville. What a great English language development program we have. So here, so yeah, that should be less of a concern with a Filipino children as compared to others that learn no English.
I learned another sentence struck me on the whole webpage, and I thought, of course that's true, but things are changing around adoption. They've been changing for a long time, and like we talked about, it's changing to become where adoption is just a valid way of becoming part of a family as birth.
Sure. It never used to be that way. It was always thought of, and I'll say going decades back, it was the last resort for a family, or it was always second best, or it was, if you were adopted, you weren't as good as anybody else. And it's much less about that. And I'd like to credit the Holt agency in general. It's just sort of changing that conversation. It is really, it's a banner of love. It's not a badge of shame. It is something that is a blessing. And when you have children in your family, you're not looking at what they look like and how different they are. You're trying to find out what makes them happy. They're doing things that make you happy. It's just normal family stuff. They are just children.
Help us though, Larry, because sometimes you found people have been caught surprised, off guard by your family makeup.
Sure.
And they do funny things. Tell us about some of the things you've run into so that we might go, oh yeah, I would never do that unless I was careless at the moment. I'm glad I heard that story so I can remind myself not to do that. What kind of things have you run into?
People will say the funniest things. We may be in a grocery line and they'll come up to my daughter who was 7 months old and they say, well, how's her English? At 7 months, it's not very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Just like any other child. In certain areas of the country, if you have a mixed racial adoption, of course our daughter is Asian, we've been in certain areas of the country, and it is really unheard of down there. And they want to come and they want to touch your child. They think it's a doll. I mean, it just really, they're not being trying to be rude. They're just being insensitive and don't know it. There's a lot of things that I think this changing the conversation about adoption can be. We are supposed to be there's not supposed to be racial barriers in this country, and this is becoming much more common, and it's certainly a lot better now than it used to be. I think about it even here in this city. My daughter, who is from South Korea, she's Asian, oftentimes isn't even the only Asian child in her class that probably also came from Holt. There's a handful of other families, Holt families here in town. Have kids look just like mine, and they're just kids, and they get in trouble just like mine, and they do things that all kids do just like mine. So there's really, it's really becoming much better, much more positive, much more considered just as good as, if not better.
Those words you said, changing the conversation, and that reminded me of that there are some old ways of talking about things and some new, more sensitive ways about talking about things around adoption, because things are changing around adoption.
Sure.
One thing that people used to say, well, this child was illegitimate. Now we say they were born to unmarried parents. It's
Sure.
just a different way of saying the same thing.
Well, think about what you're saying to a child.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
that they don't matter versus that they can't help the circumstance. They are here, regardless of the circumstances.
And then again, the same way, think about the child. Their parents placed them for adoption rather than they were unwanted or abandoned.
Correct. It makes it sound like there's something wrong with the kid, and there's not. This is a child that's happy and wants a home and would be a welcome addition to any family.
I think people are becoming more sensitive to this, and that instead of calling you're the natural parent, or that you see you're the biological parent, because if you're not the biological parent, then you're the unnatural parent. So, yeah. So these are just ways people are getting to think about adoption.
Well, I think again that conversation is changing to to positive. I think, and I won't even call it so much the political correctness stuff. I just think
no, it's about how it lands.
Right. For me, I'm just a dad.
Yeah.
You know, that's my job. That's my most important job, I think. Regardless of what my kid looks like, I've still got to do the dad stuff.
Great. That is great. Well, what have we left out? When you start your presentation, how are you going to open? What are you going to say?
Really, what I'm going to talk about within the communities, I want everyone to know who I am, my name, what my family looks like, which doesn't...
We should have had a picture.
I should have, but I didn't ask them. Sorry. Yeah. You know, what my family looks like, so they can at least say, well, at least this person has the experiences to speak about this particular topic. And obviously we have my wife and I, we have a daughter from Korea, she's 12. So we're going to talk about our family makeup, talk about what I do in the community, whether it be some of my services, whether it's school board you mentioned earlier, or teach Sunday school, other things like that, where people have seen me and go, oh, and I didn't realize that, you know. So they talk about why I'm here, you know, and it's really to advocate for children. They've always, you know, they didn't choose to be here, but I think it's our responsibility to make sure that while they're here that they have all the great experiences and wonderful life that they have. So it's going to be talking about that kind of stuff.
You have a success story.
I do.
Not you can give details on yet, but what happened?
Since we've been home, there was one of the families of a brother and two sisters.
So one of, maybe we saw in the pictures?
You did.
Okay.
You did. That there's a family that has already entered their interest in pursuing these children, and apparently it's moving ahead. Yeah. Now I don't know. They're not from the Northwest, but they're moving ahead for adopting these 3 sibling groups, and that happened about a month after we got home. So there's some success already. I had the privilege of talking to that family because I spent a great bit of time with those 3 kids. So Holt actually connected me to that family. We did some email correspondence, a couple of phone calls, and I heard back from Holt that they're moving ahead. So I'm just thrilled. You know.
Wow. So already your mission there is yielding results. You're able to talk to that family about those kids.
About those kids, and they wanted to know about what are the tendencies of this boy and that girl, and you know, do they like art, and do they like soccer, and you know, we're a real baseball family, and is that going to be okay, and all those kind of things that you would say. You know, you don't usually get to interview your children ahead of time, but it's sure nice to know some things just so you're prepared in making the right decision, and I think they were called to step in line, and this particular family is a former. They're also a Holt family too. Yeah. So what a great experience to have.
Well, thank you for being here, Larry. We're out of time, but this has been a great half an hour.
Thanks for your time and thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for being on.